In this video, we're going to talk about the last stage of the production process, mastering. This is the stage that happens after you have your final mix, but before you distribute your track for streaming or physical media or whatever. So here I have this session and it's all pretty much done here. I have the mix completed. I have my automation in. I'm not going to change anything else up in here unless I run into some kind of weird problem that I don't foresee. But down here on my master track, I have a variety of tools for mastering. And I should also point out that this is what I call a quick and dirty master. If you were going to be really legit about your mastering, you would go hire a mastering engineer. These are people with dedicated specialized equipment and dedicated specialized ears for this job. Mastering engineers master tracks all day, every day. They're very accustomed and attuned to listening for the things mastering engineers listen for. But if you don't have thousands of dollars to spend on a mastering engineer, then this might be your next best bet. And so we're going to go through some of the tools that you can use on your master track to make sure that your track is loud as a commercial release, and also that it has a unified sonic curve, which are the main goals of mastering, along with eliminating any kind of problems and doing last minute quality control checks. So down here on my master track, I have this effect rack, and it has several tools in it. It's got a glue compressor and EQ8, and both of these are designed to give an overall color to the whole track. So, you know, this EQ, for instance, when I turn it on here, if I boost or cut a frequency band, even by just a little bit, it's going to have a big effect because it's on the master track. It's affecting the entire mix. So you want to be careful with these plugins. A little bit goes a long way. Same with the glue compressor. We're not looking to get a bunch of compression here. We're just looking to squeeze out a couple more decibels of compression. No more than 5, and 5 would actually be kind of a lot. So let's listen to this track with just the glue compressor and EQ8, and I'm actually going to take this limiter off too. We'll talk about the limiter in a second here. And I'm going to go to a thinner part of the song of the remix here. Here is section 12. So you can see the needle is bouncing just above 0. I have the ratio as 2:1. I have kind of a quick release. I might actually increase that release. And I have a long attack. Again, we're compressing the entire session. So some tracks have very fast transients, some have slower transients, and we need to find some middle ground with our compressor. And here I'm accentuating some of the lows and the highs. And I'm just creating some more oomph and sparkle, if you will, in the track. And I'm going to A-B these. And the way I'm going to do that is just to turn the entire audio effect rack on and off. That way I can get these both at the same time. And you can really hear it in the lows. Those lows pop out a lot more with just this little tiny bit. I mean, look, I'm boosting it less than 3 decibels with kind of a wide Q. And I'm down kind of near 60 hertz. I could, I suppose, be a little more careful about the frequency, but I'm just going by ear. So I'm going to actually turn these off. You could use glue compressor and EQ8, great tools on the master track. You could also use this one, Multiband Dynamics. Now, this is a complex plugin, and I'm not going to take the time in this video to go over every individual setting, but this is like having an EQ and compressor in one. You have 3 bands, high, mid, and low, and you have thresholds that you can adjust right here with these boxes. And then you can adjust the gain of those bands by clicking and dragging up or down. You see that my cursor turns into this sort of arrow thing here. And so what I'm going to do is just play the track and listen for those lows and listen for those highs. I'm going to get a thicker part this time. 16 is a thicker part here. So when I drag these thresholds down to interact with these meters, and then I increase or decrease the gain, it is increasing or decreasing that frequency band. So that's how it's like an EQ and compressor in one. This plugin is very easy to abuse. Actually, all of the plugins on the master chain are very easy to abuse. One of the biggest dangers is that you add too much compression, and then your track is like this dull, lifeless block of lead. You do want some dynamic range. I mean, if your track is too compressed, number one, you're going to introduce ear fatigue into your listener, and they're not going to listen to your track as much. Number two, everything will be just kind of like the same volume level across the whole track. That's not really what you want. So do be careful with these. I don't expect you to be experts with these tools right away. Mastering is tricky. If you just try this, I'm going to be satisfied. And then, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but try it. Okay, the next tool on here is the limiter. The limiter is a very important plugin, and it's also another plugin that's abused a lot. Some people will try to put limiters on like every track, and that's crazy. You don't need to do that. What a limiter does is it's a compressor with a very high ratio, like 100:1, and it's a brick wall. Nothing gets through it. You set your ceiling here. What decibel level do you not want to go above? Of course, 0 is clipping, so it wouldn't make sense to set it at 0. It defaults to -0.3. I put mine at -0.1 because I want this track to be kind of loud and hot. You could adjust the gain here. I'm going to suggest you don't unless it really needs it. And I'm also going to suggest that in general, just put a limiter on the master as your very last plugin. If you really need to put a limiter on another track, it would be because you can't get that track quiet enough to not clip without destroying some of the sonic characteristics. So I think up here on my pads, for instance, I have a limiter on my pads submix track. And that's just because it was peaking. I couldn't get it to stop peaking, and it was affecting the compression further down the line on this master chain. So I put a limiter on it, and it solved it. Other than that, I think that this limiter is the only one I have on the session. So that's pretty standard. Don't go crazy with limiters. Put one on the master track and then set it to either the default of -0.3 or -0.1. And now you can just listen to the difference. It will make the track louder, but it will keep it from clipping also. And now you can really hear that bass boom out. The limiter has made a difference. I'm going to back off on that bass compression. And there you go. You could use all of these plugins together. You could use any combination of them. You could also switch the order of them. Right now I have my compressor going into the EQ, and I know they're both turned off, but if they were active, you could switch that order for different results. There are different philosophies behind that. I'm not going to go into them in this video, but just play around with the order of the plugins. Now, I'm actually going to turn this entire rack off. And I want to show you another plugin that is not a stock plugin from Ableton. It is from iZotope. It's called Ozone, and I have version 9. And this is a pretty standard mastering plugin that you will see all over the industry. The thing about Ozone here is that you have all of these modules, dynamic EQ, dynamics, which would be like your compressor limiter, equalizers, exciters, which sort of manipulate the frequency balance and the ratios of overtones, an imager for stereo image, and all of these other tools that you could look at. And that's a lot to wrap your head around. So my advice for a beginner is to go through the presets here. If you click on this sort of menu bar, you come up with all these presets. They're all-purpose mastering, that can work well in any genre. There are genre-specific mastering presets. And again, take all these presets with a grain of salt. Like, you might find one that sounds really good, except for like one little thing. You can go in and change the parameter that is bothering you. And so that's no problem. But I use Ozone a lot when I'm releasing tracks I teach for a living. I don't like produce music for a living. So it's not quite as critical for me. I can afford to experiment is what I'm saying. And so, yeah, just if you happen to already own Ozone, you can check it out. And I highly recommend putting it on your master chain once and then using one of the presets and manipulating parameters in that preset until you sort of become accustomed to the sound of it. So I have this electronic clarity preset, and let's listen to the difference with and without it. It makes a big difference. And so Ozone is a great way to do quick and dirty mastering. But whatever tools you use, make sure that your track still grooves, it still has life in it, and it's not like real ugly sounding, especially in the bass. It's very easy to overcompress the bass and just have it like sort of ruin the whole mix. Good luck with your mastering, and I cannot wait to hear the results.